Well, thank you for joining me, Josh. The Severe Weather. I'm a meteorologist in Raleigh. Appreciate you joining me this Tuesday evening. Well, all eyes are going to be on the Gulf over the next couple of days as we watch an area of disturbed weather, which has a small chance of becoming our next tropical depression or possibly even our next tropical storm. Whether or not it gets the name Dexter, and you can insert your jokes here about Dexter if you'd like. I am a meme person, by the way. It is going to have an impact for residents on the Gulf Coast, in particular in Louisiana and Mississippi. So we're going to talk about the impacts in this video. I'm going to break it down pretty technically. I am here to educate you, of course. I don't try to hype things up. I'm here to actually explain what's going to happen and at least do my best. But I hope you learned something today. And if you want to learn more, I urge you to become a subscriber. So I'm going to share my screen with you and walk you through what's going on here. And we will start with a look at Zoom Earth, quiet in the Pacific. Fairly quiet across the rest of the globe. This is our invest, which has a 40% chance of becoming a tropical depression or storm, and probably in the next couple of days, if it does do so. By the time we get into Friday, this system will be inland and will be unlikely to develop. Elsewhere across the globe, tropics aren't super quiet, but we don't have any main threats at this point. A pair of systems which are on the weak side have moved along the east coast of Japan, and those are heading out to sea. Nothing super strong, but this could change the landscape of the weather next week over the northern Pacific, including Alaska. And it's been a very warm start to the Pacific season when it comes to sea surface temperatures over the northwestern Pacific. Some spots are seeing anomalies of 5 degrees above the seasonal average. That's over 10 degrees Fahrenheit or 9 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty impressive. This right here is the latest outlook from the folks in Miami. And you can see here, it's disorganized, but we do have a trackable feature here. Low pressure that is moving through northern Florida as we speak. AL93 designates the fact that it's an area of investigation and tropical models are being run on it. Now, we haven't had aircraft data at this point. As the system moves into the northeastern Gulf, it's got the possibility to try to develop some. At that point, we could see aircraft getting flown into it to determine if, in fact, it would be a tropical depression. And I've talked about this for a few days. It is an area we have to watch. It's not rapidly intensifying, nothing that I'm super concerned with, at least at this point in the season, but it does certainly still bear watching. And you can see here's where our storm is centered over northeastern Florida. Jacksonville's right about here. Gainesville's about here. Tampa Bay area down in here. Right now, it's a very sloppy mess, and I'm going to break down why that is. But as the system has the possibility of going back into the Gulf, where it's got some warm water to deal with, it's going to at least have a chance to fight some unfavorable environmental conditions and maybe have a chance to spin up into a tropical depression and eventually a tropical storm. Now, this is from tropicaltidbits.com. It's a free website. I encourage you to visit it and support the man who's put this together. He's a wonderful meteorologist. I do want to show you all here the visible image so that you can see that we have, in fact, a storm system that is looking organized on satellite, but it is lacking some key features that will allow it to develop. The first feature you notice is that's over land, so it does not have the warm water to fuel off of. It's got a small chance of forming at least in the next day just because it'll still be over land through at least tomorrow morning. The second thing we were watching here is that the system is lacking thunderstorm activity near and to the north of its center. And as a result, it doesn't have a great chance of developing anytime soon. Now, here's another view of the system. And you can see, in fact, we do have the center here that's being tracked is over northeastern Florida. There's actually a mid-level center down here. So the two are actually kind of off kilter. If you go from the ground up, the low pressures are not aligned. So till that does happen, it's going to be tough to get this thing to really strengthen. With Chantal, about a week or so ago, we did see that eventually happen over the Gulf Stream here. But the difference with this system is it's moving west into an area where we do have a lot of dry mid and upper level air. And that is hampering the chances to see this thing develop. Even though it looks pretty on satellite, you see the nice spin. It really does need that moisture in place. So what's going to happen here as we look at the weather lab from Google, you can see that this is the model run from earlier today. I don't know if it's updated yet, but a bit of a reorganization of the system, taking it over northern Florida, and it will eventually come out here tomorrow. And then the track takes it west or even west-southwest. So it does have some time over the northeastern Gulf of America, but that time is fairly limited to tomorrow, mainly in the afternoon, tomorrow night, and during the day on Thursday. Not a lot of time for a system like this to really gain strength, and it's going to have some things that are going to go against it. If we look here at the individual ensembles, putting these into motion for you, you can see there's some pretty good agreement that this system moves west, but where it comes out is the question mark. We do have several ensemble members that keep it over the panhandle of Florida, others that take it into the northeastern Gulf, and eventually it lands in Louisiana. It's not going to Texas. It's probably not turning north before this. The reason for that is that we have an area of high pressure in control of the southeastern United States. Here's what a look at all of the tropical models are showing. Generally speaking, a westward track. I would say probably 2/3 of these models do bring it over water in about 24 hours. The other third keep it near the coast or inland. Now, if it's just over water, it's not really going to have a chance to take advantage of the really warm, deep ocean water that you see in the southeastern Gulf that often feeds storms that we've seen like Helene last year and Milton last year and in the past, Katrina and Rita. It's not getting into those sort of waters. The waters are warm, but the depth of the warm water is not nearly as much as it is farther south. So that is a factor to keep in mind here. And as a result, all the intensity forecasts, with the exception of maybe one here, keep this system below tropical storm strength. So I would say a chance of getting to the name DEXTER is going to be less than 10%. If you want to gamble on that, fine. At the end of the day, it's not going to matter because this is going to be more of a rainmaker than a windmaker. And I do want to show you here the ensemble forecast because I want to point out a couple of things that I've actually seen online this week that I think are all well-meaning, but at the end of the day, we have to look at the science behind this and why these charts are being made. So the European ensemble's got 50 members, and 90% of them are showing in the next 24 hours the probability of a tropical depression. But here's the thing to keep in mind here. I'm going to circle this for you all to see. The probability of tropical depression is limited to 15 knots. Now, that is not really a tropical depression. That's just a low pressure. So the circulation center is here, and you can see likely moving generally west. So it's got a chance of having 15-knot winds at some juncture of its trek here through the northeastern Gulf. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's a tropical depression. It just means it's an area of disturbed weather. As I take you further here, you can see, the red looks scary because we've got low pressure, but the odds aren't exactly increasing. In fact, it actually decreased a little bit by the time this thing lands in Louisiana on Thursday. And beyond that, the chances are, of course, going to go down as it interacts with land here Friday and Friday evening, and eventually a remnant low over northern Louisiana by the time we get to this weekend. Now, if you put this together and show the entire run probability of having a low pressure area, it's 90% or greater from Louisiana on east. Now, I've seen some headlines saying that the chances have gone up. And while that is true, if you looked at this a few days ago before we had a low pressure form, the probability of a tropical depression was, 20 to 30%. But notice here, the scale is actually different. Up here, it shows the probability of tropical depression, 25 knots. When you go back and look at the one-day probabilities here and take this back a little bit, you can see 15 knots. So there's a different scale here is what I'm trying to get at. And you can see this was the run from yesterday morning. And then the run from yesterday afternoon was greater, as by then we did have a trackable low pressure system. And then the run from the overnight, of course, has gone up. And then the run, which came out this afternoon, I should say, has greater chances. But again, we're talking 15 knots. Now, forward to the tropical storm probabilities. And this is the odds that this thing actually acquires a name, DEXTER. Now, it's not even a tropical depression, so the less than 10% or 10 to 20% chance here just isn't happening. As we take this out further, you can see there's zero chance of that happening, or less than 10% chance of that happening tomorrow. And then there's a slight chance it tries to get to that intensity by the time it lands in Louisiana on Thursday. So worst case scenario, I believe this system, if somehow it survives the elements here, might scoop up the name Tropical Storm DEXTER, but I don't think it happens until the system's already basically over the swampy areas of Louisiana. It's going to struggle to happen before then because of the limited amount of time. So you look at the full run tropical storm probabilities, and this is what's going on now, then no chance tomorrow, and then a little bit better chance by Thursday and Friday. And it, in fact, is not looking very impressive. It's not going to be a hurricane. There's zero chance of a hurricane. So at this point, we're squabbling over, does this thing become a depression or even a low end tropical storm? If it tries to, it's not going to be around for too long. So let's take a look here at the tropical models now that they're being run. And I'm going to show you here why this thing is going to struggle. This is the relative humidity, the cloud structure. You can see there's a lot of dry air north and west of the system and a fair amount of dry air to the north and east of it. And so the amount of moisture envelope is very limited here to near the center of the storm. And that's going to keep it from really getting together quickly. It just doesn't have the best environment to flourish over the northeastern Gulf. Eventually, it gets to a point where the environment's better near Louisiana, which I grew up in Louisiana. I can tell you tropical rainstorms are something we take very seriously down there. It doesn't even need a name to cause problems. Sometimes just a heavy amount of rain in a low-lying area can cause poor flooding and poor drainage. But you can see this particular model finally shows the system maybe becoming a depression as it's landing in Plaquemines or Lafourche Parish. And that's not going to be till Thursday afternoon. And then it's inland after that. And it, in fact, taps into some deeper tropical moisture. So the worst of the rain from this is likely to happen after the storm, if it even is a storm, makes landfall. And that would be on Thursday night and Friday. Beyond that, the moisture kind of gets scoured away here. There's still some moisture down here over the weekend, but it does eventually thin itself out. And fortunately, the worst of it stays to the east of the Texas Hill Country. Now, looking at another tropical model, just to kind of show you the wind field on this, the pressure field, this is going to be overnight tonight. You can see it's bouncing around because the model is having a tough time finding out where the actual low-level center is. Tropical Tidbits plots it up in here, but you can see there's a low-pressure area in here. There's a little bit of a circulation down here. So we've got competing areas of the lowest pressure. And as long as that happens, the system is not going to remain healthy from a structural standpoint, meaning there's too many players on the field to really get this thing to consolidate. Now, as we move into tomorrow afternoon and evening, and again, it's going to bounce around here because that's what this model will do. You can see the actual low pressure is not, in fact, south of Terrebonne Parish. But according to this model, it's actually up in here, but there's a very light wind flow around it. So it's reaching the Chandeleur Islands, the Barrier Islands here, Louisiana. And the strongest winds are actually well south and west of the center due to the fact that we're going to have some thunderstorms over the very warm Gulf waters early in the day, some nocturnal storms here. So again, this just does not really catch my eye. I mean, maybe here it gets a small chance of becoming something, but it's already moving inland into St. Bernard Parish here by the time we get to the end of the day on Thursday. And take a look at this, the HAVS model. And again, this is one forecast model, so we can't get too carried away with it, but it shows the system finally rallying in the few hours leading up to landfall, and then the remains coming up through Louisiana and Mississippi. So at this point, I'm not super worried about it becoming a tropical storm. The ICON model made some headlines earlier this week as it tried to spin this sucker up into a hurricane. I'll show that to you. I talked about it a little bit on my page. And the reason why is that the ICON developed the system into a legit tropical depression before it came into Florida, and then took it farther south and west away from land over warmer water, and then just gave it an opportunity to strengthen. And you can see that until a storm forms, something like this is going to be very far-fetched. If you advance it a day here, you can see a very weak system, and then advance it farther to this evening's model run, and it is not going to impress too many folks here. Just a low-end system moving into Louisiana. So 40% forecast from the Hurricane Center, I think that's great. Regardless, we're going to still have some heavy rain to deal with here in Florida tonight, upwards of maybe up to 4 inches around the eastern area of the Big Bend. And then as we get into tomorrow and Wednesday, we have that deep flow out of the southeast, and that is going to feed more bands of rain into the Florida Peninsula here, and a maximum of 4 inches showing up here on the blend of all of the models that are going out that far. Now, where this does land in Louisiana, it's going to pull some Gulf moisture up with it. We do have a possibility of maybe seeing some flooding. We could even see that in the western panhandle of Florida. We could even see that in the Mobile Bay area starting on Wednesday afternoon and continuing into Wednesday night. But as we get into Thursday, you can see the rain amounts do climb across Louisiana. And I do want to zoom in just a little bit more into Louisiana to kind of give you an idea of what the models, in fact, show. So this is Weather Bell, a great paid site for those of you that are really into the weather and want to contribute some money towards them. But you can see here, blending all the models together, we see the possibility of 3 to 6 inches of rain. And at my last check, I saw that the Climate Prediction Center, I believe it, or Weather Prediction Center, was indicating a moderate risk of some flash flooding across this area. So that includes the Atchafalaya, Mississippi River basins, Lafayette, Baton Rouge, New Orleans, especially Houma, Thibodeau, Lafourche Parish. And, I would see that possibility extended eastward here into coastal Mississippi. But the rain has been worse in Louisiana from what I personally see. And I could be missing something as well. But fortunately here, once it moves inland, you're going to see the rain amounts coming down significantly when we get to the Arklatex area and across northeastern Texas. Houston may get a little bit of rain out of this, but you got to get closer to the Sabine River to really see some heavier amounts. So this really is going to be the headliner here, I believe, this week. It's the rain. It isn't the wind. I don't even think honestly, if I were going to take a guess right now, I don't think we're going to end up with DEXTER. I'll give it a shot, but I don't think it's a big one. But that's kind of what we're going to keep an eye on here. Looking out into the rest of the tropics here, this is the main development region. Still unfavorable at this time. Caribbean's quiet. We do have a tropical wave that I'm keeping an eye on, but it's awfully far south. If we're up in here, I'd be a lot more worried, but I don't think it's going to stand a chance when it comes out there. And then across the eastern Atlantic, you can see another tropical wave coming off the coast. So kind of a 1-2 right here. But you're going to notice several things on this map. Number one, we have high wind shear values, keeping these from keeping storms organized. And two, we've got a lot of dry air coming out of the Saharan desert, and that's going to lead to sinking in the atmosphere. So we're not super worried about either of those, but I will say this, keeping an eye on water temperatures here. This is an anomaly change. This is not the actual ocean water temperature, but this is how the departure from normal has changed. And while it's much cooler than it was with respect to normal last year and in 2023, we are beginning to see some recovery, at least over the last week here. So the waters are warming up a little faster than they typically would, and we may end up in the positives here once again. One other thing I wanted to show you all here real quick, and I don't want to confuse too many folks. This is from Weather Models. This is the ensemble. And what this does is it shows the 50 different solutions of the European. It's run them 50 times, and there's an equal probability that either of these could work out. But I will say this, I'm not really seeing anything that scares me except for one of the 50 ensembles showing something on August 23rd. So just looking at other weather companies that put out 45, 90-day, day-by-day forecasts, what they're doing is they're pulling one of these versions and they're letting it run out. So if you are somebody who likes to play darts in the dark or fire off something in the dark, maybe a firearm, you're going to have to get very lucky to see one of these actually happen. So we can look at this all day, but at the end of the day, I really advise us to just stick to the trends and not try to go with an exact forecast. So if you stop me on the street tomorrow and ask me what it's going to be like in Charleston, South Carolina on the 23rd, what I'm going to tell you is there's a 1 in 50 chance that one of our models could be right. You could have a tropical system, but right now we don't know. And that's my honest answer, and that's what I'm going to stick to it. So you can see things are still pretty unfavorable over the Atlantic basin. The brown indicates sinking air coming down, and that is not good for tropical development. But over time, there will be a pulse in the tropics that moves across the equator and eventually lands itself in the central Atlantic. That could be as soon as next weekend, but this is not a very strong signal. It's a better signal, of course. So we may have some more tropical waves to deal with, more rain coming into the Lesser Antilles, into the Eastern Caribbean Sea here by next week. But again, not an overwhelming signal, at least for the next couple of weeks. This is just one piece of the pattern. There are others that we have to watch. One main one being wind shear. And you can see wind shear here has been quite high over the Caribbean Sea. It's also been pretty high across the Eastern and Central Atlantic. Trades have been above average, meaning that whatever comes off the coast zips across and kind of loses its organization. So over time, we're going to have to keep an eye to see if that wind shear does in fact lessen. You can see the European ensemble indicates lower amounts of wind shear. It's not obvious to you, so I'm going to circle it here, but you can see wind shear does begin to lessen some in a couple of weeks. At that point, it may get a little bit more favorable. We also have lesser wind shear across the Southern Gulf and the Southwest Atlantic. But the opportunity to see something forming like this is going to be hampered by wind shear up here in the Northern Gulf and on the Southwest coast. And the reason why is you've got a ridge of high pressure here. You've got a weak ridge here. And in between the two, you've got stronger wind shear as those do battle with each other. So this is the same thing. Just want to show you where we are with respect to average real quick, very technical stuff. But you can see here the wind shear across the Northern Gulf out of the east is significant enough to cause this system to not really be all that strong. Here's that wind shear in here, and it is above average. I've seen folks posting on here that it was in fact below average, but that is not the case. So we're here to set the record straight. It does come down in a couple of days. We see a bit of relief from that shear around Louisiana by Thursday. You can kind of see in here the reds come down and push south of our system. And then they ramp right back up. And then we get a little bit of relaxation here next week. And then the wind shear picks up again. But the area I'm actually going to be watching more closely is what comes off of Africa. And you can see in here, we've had strong westerlies, which create wind shear up and over, but we're starting to see easterlies in here beginning to weaken some. And what that means is we may see some more sustained tropical activity in the coming days. I want to show that to you here as well. I had this open earlier, but the anomaly, when it's in the red, that indicates either the winds are strong out of the west aloft, which is not good for tropical activity in the tropics because we need them to be light or more from the east. But over time, we do see more purples showing up, and those start to shift south. So towards the beginning of August, we do see lesser wind shear in here and more of the lighter easterly trades. And so, of course, that happens this time of the year, and that's what we need to be watching. So we're going to leave you with that, but I do want to also leave you with a word of encouragement as a Christian man. Again, this has nothing to do with me as a meteorologist. This is me as a believer and as a Christian, but I do want to encourage you not to be anxious. Philippians 4, 6, and 7, Paul tells the church of Philippi, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Anxiety is a real thing. It's something I've struggled with all of my life. And that's what happens when you believe that what can go wrong will go wrong. What you're doing there is you're taking the credit away from God, who has already sent his son Jesus to die on the cross so that we can have some peace. We can live in peace eternally if we choose to believe that. But the enemy out there wants us to worry about what may not happen. Fear is false evidence appearing real. It is a down payment on something that may or may not even happen. Stuff happens. I'm not going to use bad words, but there's a 4-letter word, happens. I've seen that t-shirt. I may have even worn it when I was younger. But what that means is that we tend to worry, but God wants us to believe in him, to trust in him, that he will make your path straight. Bring our concerns to God through prayer. Pray about everything you can. There are things we can't control, but pray about it, and God will come through in the end. I've seen how he helps use folks in times of natural disasters. I've seen how he has helped folks who have lost it all just have a grain of hope that one day they have the opportunity to stay with God, and all their worries are put away for good eternally, because God and his peace surpass all of our human understanding. He guards our hearts and our minds in Christ Jesus. And that is not something a human can have. It is a divine gift that God gives to us. And that is the good news that I wanted to share with you before leaving here this evening. So I appreciate everybody's time today, and I hope everyone stays safe. Look for more updates coming up this week. God bless.